today nothing needs to change here. There's no pace to follow, no moment to catch, no reason to stay alert. Things are already settled in their own way, and whatever happens next can take its time. The rain has been tapping against the windows for a while now, soft and irregular, some drops heavier than others, the kind of sound that fills the space without demanding anything from it. And inside the coffee shop, the air carries that particular warmth that comes from hours of brewing. From the espresso machine that hums quietly near the back counter, from the bodies that have come and gone throughout the evening. Wooden tables scattered across the room hold the evidence of the day. Ring marks from cups long since cleared. A few surfaces still occupied by people who seem in no hurry to be anywhere else. Their conversations too quiet to follow. Just murmurs that blend with the rain and the soft music coming from somewhere overhead. The light has that amber quality, not bright enough to feel clinical, not dim enough to strain against. It pools on certain surfaces and leaves others in gentle shadow. The counter where pastries sit under glass, the worn floorboards that creak occasionally when someone shifts position or walks toward the back. Outside the windows, the street has that wet shine. Headlights passing occasionally and leaving trails of reflection on the pavement. The kind of view that makes staying inside feel less like a choice and more like the only sensible thing, though no one here seems to be thinking about it much. They just are where they are. The coffee smell has layers to it, something darker and richer near the machines, something sweeter near the display case, and throughout the room, a general warmth that has soaked into the walls over years of mornings and afternoons and evenings like this one. It doesn't announce itself. It just exists as part of what this space is. Someone behind the counter moves between tasks without urgency, wiping a surface here, adjusting something there, the kind of movement that happens when work has slowed to maintenance rather than service. And the few customers remaining don't seem to need much. They have their cups, they have their tables, they have the rain outside and the warmth inside. The windows have started to fog slightly at the edges where the temperature difference is greatest, softening the view of the street, making the lights outside blur into something gentler than they would be through clear glass. And the rain finds different rhythms against the panes. Sometimes a gust makes it tap harder. Then it settles back. A chair scrapes quietly as someone adjusts their position. The sound absorbed almost immediately by the general atmosphere, by the music that has shifted to another song without anyone particularly noticing. The melody different, but the feeling much the same. Something acoustic and unhurried that asks nothing of its listeners. The floor near the entrance has dried now from the last person who came in shaking water from their umbrella. The wood returning to its usual matte finish, and the door hasn't opened in some time. The evening having reached that hour, when most people are already where they intend to be. Heat rises from cups that still hold their warmth, visible briefly as steam before it disperses into the air, joining whatever atmosphere the room has accumulated. The temperature, neither remarkable nor uncomfortable, just present in the way that air is present when no one is thinking about breathing. The rain outside carries no particular intensity, steady enough to be expected, light enough that walking through it wouldn't be unpleasant. But no one seems interested in testing that. The tables by the windows offer a view of water running down glass, of the occasional pedestrian passing with coat pulled tight, of a world that goes on doing whatever it does while, inside, very little needs to happen at all. Someone turns a page of something they're reading. The sound, small and papery, lost almost immediately, and the person behind the counter has paused near the espresso machine, looking out at nothing in particular. The kind of stillness that comes from having done everything that needs doing and finding peace in the waiting. The light catches the surface of coffee in cups at different angles, some showing the fixtures reflected in miniature, others just holding their dark warmth without gleam. And under the table's feet are positioned in various states of comfort, some flat on the floor, others tucked beneath chairs, all of them belonging to people who have found their way to something like rest. A drop of condensation runs down one of the window panes, tracing a path through the fog that has gathered there, and outside a car passes slowly, its tires making that wet sound on pavement that carries even through glass. Then it's gone, and the street returns to its quiet state, emptier than before, but not noticeably so. The espresso machine releases a small hiss of steam, routine and mechanical, the sound of something doing what it was designed to do without requiring attention. And near the back of the shop, a lamp casts its circle of warmer light on a corner table where someone sits with their hands wrapped around a cup that may or may not still hold anything worth drinking. The ceiling is old wood, beams that have darkened over decades, absorbing smoke and steam and the accumulated hours of a place that has been itself for a long time. Cobwebs in corners that no one notices or cares about. Light fixtures that have hung in their positions through seasons and years. None of it calling attention to itself. The rain finds a rhythm and loses it, finds another. Never quite the same pattern twice, but never different enough to draw attention. And the people remaining in the coffee shop have reached that state where time stops mattering much, where the next thing they need to do exists somewhere in the future, but doesn't press against the present moment. Warmth from the kitchen area carries faint traces of bread, from earlier in the day probably, mixed now with coffee and the particular smell of a room where people have been comfortable for hours. The air holding all of it without distinction, without hierarchy, just the combined scent of a place being what it is, without trying to be anything else. Someone's phone lights up briefly on a table, illuminating their face for a moment in that bluish glow, then goes dark again. Whatever message it carried absorbed without urgency, and the moment passes without leaving any trace in the atmosphere of the room, without changing anything that could be measured or described. The floor shows its age in the way certain boards have worn smoother than others. Paths traced by years of footsteps between door and counter, between counter and tables. The wood remembering what people rarely notice, holding the history of a space in its grain and its wear patterns, while the present moment simply adds another thin layer to the accumulation. Outside, the rain continues its patient work on the city, washing streets and sidewalks and the leaves of whatever trees line this block. And inside the coffee shop, the warmth holds in that way warmth does when it has nowhere else to go, contained by walls and windows and ceiling, filling the space evenly. The music has become part of the room itself, not something playing so much as something present, the way the warmth is present, the way the coffee smell is present, all of it woven together into what this evening has become, what it will likely remain until the lights go off and the chairs get stacked on tables. A cup is set down on a saucer with a small ceramic sound, and somewhere water runs briefly in a sink behind the counter. Ordinary sounds of a place in its ordinary operations. Nothing that would draw the eye or interrupt a thought. Just the auditory furniture of a coffee shop in its evening hours. The windows frame the rain and the street beyond. The darkness outside making the interior feel more complete somehow, more separate from everything that isn't this room. The glass serving as a boundary between two different temperatures, two different kinds of light, two different ways of being in the world at this particular moment. Near one of the tables, a coat hangs from the back of a chair, its fabric still holding some dampness from earlier, testament to a journey through rain that ended here, and the owner of the coat doesn't seem to be thinking about leaving anytime soon, absorbed in whatever absorbs them, a book or a phone, or simply the experience of sitting with a warm drink. The person behind the counter has moved to organizing cups, stacking them by size or type, the kind of task that fills time without requiring thought. Hands doing what they've done hundreds of times before. The muscle memory of work carrying the body through motions while the mind wanders wherever it wanders. A street light visible through one of the fogged windows creates a soft yellow bloom in the glass, its edge uncertain, its center bright but not sharp, and the rain passing through its glow looks silver for a moment before disappearing into darkness below. A small show that plays continuously for anyone who cares to watch. The floor creaks under someone's weight as they shift in their chair. the building speaking in its old way, boards flexing against joists that were installed generations ago, and then settling back into silence. The sound swallowed by the general atmosphere of the room. Coffee grounds sit in a container near the espresso machine, dark and fragrant and still warm from recent use, waiting to be discarded or composted, or whatever happens to spent grounds at the end of a day. Their strongest purpose already served. Their remaining contribution, just the smell they add to the air around them. The rain has neither increased nor decreased in any noticeable way. It simply falls as it has been falling, as it might continue falling for hours, or might stop in the next few minutes. Impossible to know, and not particularly important to know. Just another element of an evening that asks nothing and offers simple presence in return. Someone coughs quietly in a far corner. A small human sound that rises and dissipates, and life in the coffee shop absorbs it without comment. The music playing on, the rain falling on, the warmth holding on, nothing pausing or acknowledging because nothing needs to. The light from a table lamp falls in a cone shape onto the wood beneath it, illuminating the grain, showing the scratches and stains that have accumulated over years of cups and plates and elbows resting. And at the edge of the light, the shadows begin gradually. No hard line between bright and dark, just a gentle transition into dimness. Behind the counter, a small refrigerator hums at a frequency just below conscious notice. The sound of cold being maintained, of milk and cream staying fresh for tomorrow's customers. Part of the mechanical life of the space that carries on regardless of who is present or what they might be doing. The windows show reflections, now as well as views. The interior of the shop, visible in the glass, alongside the street outside. A doubled world where people inside appear to hover over wet pavement, where the counter seems to extend out into the rain. The two realities overlapping in the way only nighttime windows can manage. A napkin dispenser sits on one of the unoccupied tables, chrome and slightly worn, holding its stack of paper in readiness for needs that won't come tonight. And beside it, a small container of sugar packets rests undisturbed. The kind of still life that forms accidentally in public spaces. Objects waiting for purpose. The person reading in the corner hasn't turned a page in some time. Perhaps lost in thought. Perhaps reading the same paragraph repeatedly. Perhaps not reading at all anymore, but just holding the book as a kind of prop. A reason to be sitting alone in a coffee shop on a rainy evening. And it doesn't matter which, because the sitting is what matters. Outside a bus passes, larger and louder than the cars that came before. Its shape visible briefly through the rain-streaked windows. Interior lights showing passengers who have their own destinations and their own reasons for traveling at this hour. Then It's past, and the street belongs to the rain again. The coffee shop has that particular quiet that comes when a space is occupied, but not busy. When the people present have found their equilibrium and settled into it. When conversation happens in murmurs rather than full voices. When even the staff has stopped performing the more theatrical aspects of service and simply maintains. A draft from somewhere moves the air slightly, barely perceptible, but present. Perhaps from a gap around a window or a door. Perhaps from the ventilation system doing whatever it does. The kind of movement that wouldn't be noticed except in how it carries scent from one part of the room to another. Coffee smell drifting past. Warm bread smell following. The rain makes the world outside feel farther away than it actually is. The few meters between the coffee shop windows and the street becoming a kind of buffer zone. A space of water and darkness that separates the warmth inside from everything else. And the people here seem to appreciate that distance, even if they're not consciously aware of it. The espresso machine sits in its corner like a mechanical heart. Brass and chrome and various tubes and gauges. Silent now, except for the occasional tick of metal cooling or heating. Ready for the next order, but not expecting one. The barista having learned to read the room, and knowing that most drinks that will be made tonight have already been made. A small plant sits on a shelf near the register. Something hardy that survives on neglect and indirect light. Its leaves dusty and slightly drooping, but alive. Part of the decor in the way that plants in public spaces often are. Not exactly thriving, but not dying either. Just existing in its pot and adding its small green note to the browns and ambers of the room. The floor beneath the tables has collected its share of crumbs from the day. Bits of pastry and bread that have escaped notice. That will be swept up when closing time comes. For now, they just rest where they fell. Small evidence of appetites satisfied, of food consumed in this space throughout the hours. Someone stretches in their chair, arms reaching upward, spine lengthening. The kind of movement that happens unconsciously when a body has been still too long, then settling back into position. The stretch complete. Whatever tension it addressed released into the warm air of the room. The music changes again. Another song beginning where the last one ended. This one with a piano prominent in the mix. Notes falling like the rain outside. Measured and deliberate and unhurried. And the transition happens without announcement. Without anyone needing to approve or object. Just part of the continuous soundtrack the shop provides. Near the door, a mat holds the memory of wet shoes. Its fibers darker in some spots than others. The moisture slowly evaporating into the warmth of the room. And beyond it, the actual door with its glass panel showing the street. The handle that hasn't been touched in a while. The small sign that lists the hours of operation, though no one inside needs to read it. The windows have fogged more completely now. The outside world becoming impressionistic through the moisture. Shapes and lights visible, but details obscured. And someone could wipe a clear spot in the glass to see out. But no one does. The soft blur seeming preferable to sharp clarity. The separation it creates feeling right for this kind of evening. A wallet sits on a table next to a phone. Both ignored by their owner, who stares at something beyond the window, or at nothing at all. Lost in whatever thoughts occupy a mind on a rainy night. And these objects wait with the patience of inanimate things, ready to be picked up when it's time to leave, but not reminding anyone that leaving is an option. The smell of coffee has a particular quality at this hour. Less bright than in the morning when the first pots are brewed. More settled, more integrated with all the other scents of the space. Wood and warmth and the faint metallic note of the equipment. And something else harder to name. The smell of time spent in comfortable stillness. The rain finds a downspout somewhere nearby, and the sound of water channeling through it adds a lower note to the general percussion. A gurgling rush that comes and goes as the flow varies. Part of the building's response to weather. Part of how this place has handled rain for however many years it has stood on this corner. A cup of coffee has gone cold on one of the tables. Its owner either not noticing or not caring. The surface still and dark, no longer steaming. The drink having completed its journey from hot to room temperature while attention was elsewhere. And it sits there as evidence of time passing, even when time doesn't seem to be passing at all. The person behind the counter has stopped moving altogether, standing near the register with hands resting on the counter, eyes focused somewhere in the middle distance. The kind of pause that work allows when work is slow. A small vacation taken without leaving the premises, and the shop carries on around them, needing nothing, demanding nothing. Light from the street creates patterns on the ceiling as cars pass. Brief sweeps of illumination that travel across the old plaster. The shadows of raindrops on windshields projected upward. And these patterns come and go without regularity, depending on traffic that follows its own logic, unconnected to anything happening inside. The tables near the back of the shop sit empty, their chairs pushed in neatly, their surfaces wiped clean from the last customers who sat there, waiting for tomorrow or for someone who won't come tonight. And the light doesn't quite reach them fully, leaving them in a soft darkness that makes them feel farther away than they actually are. A fly buzzes somewhere near the window, an unlikely presence for a rainy evening, but present nonetheless. Its path erratic and purposeless, bouncing off glass and reversing direction before finding a corner to settle in. Its small life continuing in the margins of the space while the larger lives around it remain unaware. The floor has settled over the years in ways that make some tables slightly uneven. A folded napkin under one leg here. A small wooden wedge there. Adjustments made to accommodate the building's slow shifting. And the people sitting at these tables have made their own adjustments. Learning to set cups down in spots where they won't wobble. Someone sighs audibly. The kind of deep breath that releases something. Tension or thought, or simply the body's need to fully inflate the lungs. And the sound carries briefly before being absorbed. Part of the human weather of the space. As natural as the rain outside. As unremarkable as the hum of the refrigerator behind the counter. The rain continues in its variations. Sometimes harder against the windows, sometimes softer, the sound rising and falling like breathing. And inside the coffee shop, these variations register at some level below conscious attention, affecting mood perhaps, creating a kind of auditory texture that changes without anyone noticing exactly when or how it changed. The walls of the coffee shop hold various things. A framed photograph of the neighborhood from decades ago. A chalkboard with specials written in colored chalk. Some artwork that might have been made by a local artist or might have been purchased from a catalog. None of it demanding attention, all of it fading into the background where decoration belongs when it's been looked at too many times to really be seen anymore. A jacket hangs from a hook near the entrance. Dark fabric spotted with rain, belonging to someone who came in earlier and hasn't left. And the jacket drips slowly onto the floor beneath, drops falling at intervals too irregular to predict, each one making a small sound as it lands on the worn wood. The pastry case shows its remaining inventory through glass that has fingerprints on it from customers who pointed at what they wanted earlier in the day. A few croissants, something with chocolate, a muffin that looks drier than it probably is, and these items wait without expectation, their best hours behind them, their remaining purpose uncertain. Near one of the occupied tables a newspaper rests on an empty chair, folded and abandoned. Headlines visible, but not being read. News from earlier today or maybe yesterday. Information that seemed important to someone at some point, but has been left behind like so many newspapers in so many coffee shops. Destined for recycling or the trash. The person by the window has shifted position. Now leaning an elbow on the table and resting their head against their hand. Eyes still directed at the rain. Body finding a new configuration that might last 5 minutes or an hour. The kind of adjustment that happens without decision. The body knowing what it needs before the mind considers the question. A clock on the wall shows the time. Hands pointing to numbers that indicate how late the evening has become. And anyone could look at it and know exactly where they stand in relation to midnight or closing time. But no one seems inclined to check. The clock doing its job without an audience, marking minutes that feel less relevant than they might during busier hours. The steam from someone's fresh cup rises in a thin column before diffusing. Caught briefly in a slant of light from one of the fixtures. Made visible for a moment like breath on a cold day. Except the air isn't cold. Just ordinary air that happens to be the right temperature to let steam become visible before it disappears. Behind the counter, the day's receipts are gathered in a small stack. Paper evidence of transactions completed. Money exchanged for coffee and pastries, and the right to occupy a table for as long as felt comfortable. And these papers will be tallied eventually, but not now. Now, they just rest beside the register as part of the business left undone until closing. The window nearest the corner has a small crack in one pane. Old damage that was never repaired, and the rain finds its way into this crack, pooling slightly on the inner sill. A small leak that someone will wipe up eventually. That probably gets wiped up after every rain. An ongoing negotiation between the building and the weather. Outside, a streetlight flickers briefly. A small electrical uncertainty, then steadies again. And anyone watching would have seen it, but no one was. The moment passing unwitnessed. The light resuming its work of illuminating the rain and the wet pavement, and whatever small portion of the night falls within its reach. The music has become slower now. Whoever created the playlist understanding that evenings have their own requirements. That what worked at 4 in the afternoon doesn't suit 9 at night. And the tempo carries something of the rain in it. Something of the warmth. Something that matches the pace of people who have stopped hurrying. A teaspoon rests in a saucer. Its bowl holding a small amount of coffee that was stirred into something earlier. Sugar maybe, or cream. And the spoon sits there like a tiny sculpture, handle pointing toward an empty chair, waiting to be cleared away when someone gets around to it. The person behind the counter has begun the quiet work of closing. Not officially yet, but the preliminary stages, wiping down surfaces that were already clean, arranging things that were already arranged, the kind of ritualistic preparation that makes the final closing quicker and easier. Each small task a step toward the end of the day. Near the back, a radiator ticks occasionally, metal expanding or contracting as the heating system responds to some thermostat's instruction. The sound barely audible above the rain and the music, but present for anyone listening carefully. Part of the chorus of small noises that fill what might otherwise seem like silence. A bookmark lies on the table next to the closed book in the corner. A strip of paper with something printed on it. Perhaps a receipt repurposed. Perhaps something saved intentionally. And it marks a page that won't be returned to tonight. The reading having concluded or paused for reasons known only to the reader. The rain has created small rivers along the street outside. Water following the paths gravity dictates, collecting near drains, reflecting the lights of the coffee shop in wavering lines. And this water carries whatever it carries, dust and debris and the small particulate matter of urban air, heading for the sewers and eventually the river and eventually the sea. Someone's keys sit on a table, attached to a fob or a decorative keychain, the metal catching light when it catches light. And these keys wait like the wallet waited earlier. Inanimate objects marking human presence, promising that someone will stand and pick them up and use them to start a car or unlock a door when the time comes. The door to the coffee shop has a small bell attached to it, the kind that jingles when customers enter or leave, and it has been silent for some time now, the door having remained closed, the bell waiting in its position at the top of the frame, ready to announce arrivals that might not come before closing. A spider web stretches in one corner of a window frame, its architect long gone or hidden, the web slightly dusty and neglected, but still intact, catching the occasional light from passing cars, and the rain doesn't touch it. The small overhang of the window providing shelter for this tiny construction. The coffee smell shifts subtly as the evening deepens. Less about fresh brewing now, more about the accumulated presence of beans and grounds, and the residue left by a day's worth of drinks. A smell that has settled into the furniture, into the walls, into whatever absorbent surfaces exist in this space. Someone's breathing has become slow and deep, the rhythm of near sleep, and though they might startle awake if spoken to, for now they drift in that comfortable territory between consciousness and its absence, head tilted at an angle that will probably cause a sore neck later. But that doesn't matter right now. The windows continue their work of separation, glass doing what glass does, allowing light to pass while holding temperature and weather at bay. And the rain continues its work against them, making sounds, leaving trails, being rain without any awareness of being watched or listened to. Near the espresso machine, a collection of mugs hangs from hooks, different sizes and styles, some with the shop's logo and some without, accumulated over years of service, chipped in places, stained in others, veterans of countless drinks prepared and consumed, and they hang there waiting their turn, some that won't come tonight. The person reading has closed their book now, though they haven't moved otherwise. The book resting on the table, with the bookmark still marking whatever page seemed important when reading stopped. And the person sits in the kind of stillness that books sometimes create. The story still processing, the mind still somewhere in the narrative, even though the eyes have stopped moving across words. A light fixture makes a small buzzing sound, electrical and intermittent, the kind of noise that would be annoying if noticed, but that fades into the background when attention goes elsewhere. And the light it produces is steady despite the sound, illuminating its portion of the room without flickering or failing. The rain outside has developed a particular smell that reaches inside when the door opens, which it hasn't in a while, but the memory of that smell lingers. Something clean and mineral and cool, mixing with the coffee warmth, creating a combination unique to rainy evenings in places like this. A small stack of napkins sits on each occupied table, precisely folded and waiting, their purpose clear, their presence unremarkable, and they get used occasionally. Someone dabbing at a spill or wiping fingers, but mostly they just wait. Part of the setup that makes a table feel ready for customers, even if the customers have stopped needing much. The cash register makes a small sound as it settles, some internal mechanism clicking into place, and the person behind the counter doesn't react, having heard this sound 1,000 times, knowing it means nothing. Just the machine doing whatever machines do when they're powered on but not being used. Outside, a pedestrian passes close to the window. Umbrella visible first. Then a face briefly illuminated by the coffee shop's light. Then gone, continuing to whatever destination warranted walking through rain at this hour. And the window returns to its view of empty sidewalk and falling water. The ceiling shows water stains in one corner. Old damage from some past leak. Repaired well enough that no water comes through now, but the marks remain. Brown edges on plaster that was once uniformly white. History written in the building's surface for anyone who cares to look up and notice. A sugar packet has been torn open and left on a table. Its contents used. Its wrapper crumpled into a tiny ball and resting in a saucer. The kind of small debris that accumulates in public spaces. That gets cleared away eventually. That tells a story of someone who wanted their coffee sweeter than it came. The person behind the counter has found a spot to lean, hip against the back counter, arms crossed loosely, the posture of someone waiting without urgency, watching the room without watching it, present without being active, available without being engaged. Near the window, someone's glasses rest folded beside an empty cup, the lenses catching light at angles that make them gleam, and their owner squints slightly at the rain, perhaps preferring the blur, perhaps simply giving their eyes a rest from the focusing that reading requires. The music plays a song with a cello in it, the low notes resonant and slow, and the sound fills the spaces between rain sounds and refrigerator hum and the occasional creak of old floorboards, adding depth to the quiet without disturbing it. A chair at an empty table has been pulled out, left that way by whoever sat there last. Invitation and evidence combined, and it faces the window slightly, angled as if its former occupant wanted to watch the street while drinking, or perhaps just ended up that way through the ordinary movements of sitting and standing. The warmth in the room has that quality of air that has been breathed. Not stale exactly, but occupied, carrying the presence of the people who have spent time here. And this is neither unpleasant nor remarkable. Just part of what indoor spaces feel like when they've been doing their job of sheltering humans from the weather. The rain traces lines down the window glass, some drops joining together to form larger streams, others making their solitary way from top to bottom. And the paths they take are unpredictable, governed by surface tension and gravity and the microscopic variations of the glass. Each drop finding its own route. A pen lies on one of the tables, probably left behind by someone who was writing or working, and it rests there in the ordinary way pens rest, unremarkable, waiting to be claimed or thrown away or added to the collection of lost things that every public place accumulates over time. The person who was nearly sleeping has shifted, not quite waking, but not as deep in drowsiness as before, finding a new position in the chair, head now upright, eyes half open, hovering in that borderland where the room is visible but not quite real, where time moves differently. Behind the counter, the dishwasher sits empty and silent, its work done for now. Clean cups and saucers stacked on the drain board, and the machine waits like all the machines wait, ready to be useful when usefulness is required, content to be inactive until then. The windows show the street in segments, each pane offering a slightly different view, and together they create a panorama of the rainy night outside. The sidewalk, the parked cars, the buildings across the way with their own lights in their own windows, their own people doing their own things. Someone clears their throat softly, a small sound that might mean nothing or might prelude speech, but no speech follows, just the throat clearing and then silence. And the room absorbs this moment like it absorbs all moments, without comment, without change. A candle burns on one of the tables near the back, its flame small and steady, protected from drafts by the glass holder that surrounds it. And the light it creates is warmer than the electric lights, more orange than amber, a pocket of old-fashioned illumination in a room mostly lit by modern means. The floor has developed a kind of polish in the high-traffic areas, the wood worn smooth by years of feet, and this smoothness reflects light differently than the less worn sections, creating a subtle geography of use, a map of how people have moved through this space since it opened. Outside, a taxi passes slowly, its light on top glowing, looking for fares in a night that doesn't seem to have many people needing rides, and it disappears around a corner, its taillights leaving red trails in the wet street. Then nothing but rain and the occasional other vehicle. The espresso machine releases a soft click, some internal process completing or beginning, and the sound is unremarkable enough that the person behind the counter doesn't glance its way. Familiar with every noise the machine makes, knowing the difference between normal operations and something that might need attention, a cup of water sits on one table, ordered perhaps by someone who wanted to stay but didn't want more coffee, and the water catches light cleanly. No color to distort it, no steam to blur the surface, just clear liquid in a clear glass doing nothing but being available. The walls show their texture in the angled light. Rough plaster that was probably hand-applied decades ago, painted over many times but never smoothed. And this texture creates small shadows, tiny variations that give the surface character, that make it look crafted rather than manufactured. Someone's foot taps slowly against the floor, a rhythm that might be keeping time with the music or might be entirely independent. And the sound is soft enough to disappear into the general atmosphere. Just another small percussion adding to the ambient soundtrack of the evening. Near the door, a bulletin board holds various notices, flyers for local events, business cards for services, a lost cat poster that might be weeks or months old, and no one looks at these things anymore. They've become part of the wall itself, decoration rather than information. The rain has developed a particular intensity that isn't harder exactly, more focused perhaps. The sound against the windows having found a specific register that it maintains. And inside the coffee shop, this translates to a kind of white noise, a constant wash of sound that makes other sounds seem more present by contrast. A bag sits under one of the occupied tables, leather or faux leather, containing whatever someone felt they needed to bring with them, and it rests against the table leg, slightly collapsed, waiting to be picked up when its owner decides the evening has lasted long enough. The light from outside creates moving shadows when cars pass. Brief animations of rain and light playing across the walls and ceiling. And these moments come without warning and leave without trace. The room returning to its stable illumination as soon as the headlights have moved on. The person behind the counter has started wiping down the espresso machine, using a cloth that has been used for this purpose many times, knowing which surfaces need attention and which can be left. The movements practiced and efficient. The kind of maintenance that happens every night around this time. Outside, the rain creates its own kind of privacy. The poor visibility and the inconvenience of getting wet, keeping most people indoors. And the coffee shop benefits from this, becomes a small island of warmth in an evening that discourages wandering. A destination rather than a stop along the way. A menu board behind the counter shows options that haven't changed in months or maybe years. The price is written in chalk that has been refreshed periodically, but the items staying the same. espresso and Americano and latte, and the other variations that every coffee shop offers. Familiar and expected, the person in the corner has finally put down their book, setting it on the table with a small thud that disappears into the room's ambient sound. And they look around as if seeing the space for the first time in a while, eyes adjusting from page to room, from story to reality. A napkin has fallen to the floor near one of the tables, drifting down at some point when no one was watching, and it lies there in a small white heap, waiting to be noticed and picked up, or to be swept away later when the closing routine begins. The ceiling fan hangs motionless, the season not calling for its use, and dust has settled on its blades, visible when the light catches at certain angles, the kind of detail that would be attended to in a thorough cleaning, but that doesn't bother anyone in the meantime. Someone stretches their legs under the table, feet extending into the aisle briefly before retracting. The kind of movement that happens when a body has been still too long, and the chair protests slightly with a small creak, then accepts its occupant's return to stillness. The windows have developed patterns in their condensation, areas of fog and areas of clarity, the breadth of the room made visible on glass, and these patterns shift slowly as the evening progresses, responding to changes in temperature and humidity that are too subtle to feel, but visible in their effects. A fly has landed on the rim of an empty cup, testing whatever residue remains there. Wings still, body motionless except for the small movements of feeding. And no one notices this small life going about its business. The fly invisible in its insignificance. The music has entered a quieter phase, the songs themselves seeming to recognize the hour. Fewer instruments, more space between notes, the kind of sound that accompanies rather than leads, that fills silence without creating presence. Background music in the truest sense of the term. The person behind the counter checks their phone, screen illuminating their face briefly, then puts it away. The gesture automatic and without apparent purpose, just filling a moment, checking for something that wasn't there or responding to something too small to require more attention. The street outside shows its emptiness through the rain-streaked windows. Storefronts dark across the way. A few apartment windows lit above them. And the occasional car passing through adds temporary motion to a scene that is otherwise still. Headlights and taillights, and then nothing again. A spoon clinks against the inside of a cup. Someone stirring what might already be thoroughly mixed. The motion habitual rather than functional. And the small sound joins all the other small sounds of the evening, part of the fabric rather than a disruption of it. The floor creaks in a new place as weight shifts somewhere in the room. Old boards speaking their old language, and then settling back into silence. The sound so much a part of this space that no one looks up or around to see what caused it. The rain has found a new rhythm, or perhaps it's the same rhythm heard differently. The ears adjusting to what has become constant, noticing variations that might have been there all along, or might be new. Impossible to say, and not worth the effort of determining. A poster on the wall shows a coffee-growing region somewhere. Mountains and green plants and sunny skies. An image that has nothing to do with the rainy evening outside, but everything to do with what this place sells. And it hangs there, slightly crooked, having been hung imperfectly at some point and never straightened. The person who was nearly sleeping is fully awake now, though still not moving, just sitting in their chair looking at nothing in particular, inhabiting the room without engaging with it. Present, but distant. The way people sometimes are when the hour is late and the body is tired. Near the front window, a small table holds 2 chairs, both empty, positioned to face each other as if waiting for a conversation that won't happen tonight. And the table between them holds nothing but its own surface. No cups or napkins or evidence of recent occupation. The warmth in the room has a weight to it. The accumulated heat of hours, of bodies and machines, and the simple physics of an enclosed space. And this warmth presses gently against everyone and everything. Not uncomfortable, but present. Tangible in a way that temperature sometimes is. A car alarm sounds briefly in the distance, muffled by walls and windows and rain, then stops, resolved somehow, and the coffee shop absorbs this small interruption without notice. The people inside perhaps not even registering the sound, or registering it and forgetting it in the same moment. The espresso machine makes its occasional sounds, clicks and hisses that happen on their own schedule. And these sounds have become part of the room's vocabulary, as expected as the rain, as unremarkable as the music. Just another voice in the chorus of a coffee shop at night. The rain outside creates a kind of curtain between the coffee shop and the rest of the world. Not solid, but present, making everything beyond the windows feel farther away than it actually is. And this distance is comfortable, protective, a benefit of the weather that no one asked for, but everyone accepts. Someone shifts in their chair, the movement causing a small symphony of sounds. Fabric against wood, wood against floor, the creak of joints, both human and furniture, and then stillness again, the adjustment complete, comfort restored for another stretch of time. The light from the table lamp in the corner creates a warm circle that doesn't quite reach the next table, leaving a boundary of dimness between one pool of illumination and another. And in these dim spaces, the room seems to hold its breath, waiting for nothing, expecting nothing, a drop of water falls from somewhere near the window, the source invisible, and it lands on the sill with a sound that might be heard if anyone were listening for it. But no one is. The drop, just one more small event in an evening full of small events that add up to very little. The person behind the counter has finished with the espresso machine and moved on to straightening the cups on their shelves, aligning handles, making sure everything looks presentable. The kind of work that happens automatically at this hour. Hands knowing what to do without the mind needing to direct them. Outside, a light in one of the apartment windows across the street goes dark. Someone going to bed or simply turning off a lamp. And the building's face changes slightly. One less point of illumination in the grid of windows. One more space claimed by the night. The coffee smell has settled into its evening version, deeper and less sharp than before. More about the beans themselves, and less about the hot water that releases their flavor. A smell that has sunk into everything. That will remain even after the last cup has been served and the machines turned off. A small sound comes from the refrigerator behind the counter. The compressor cycling or something shifting on a shelf. And the sound comes and goes in a moment, leaving no trace, changing nothing. Just another note in the continuous quiet music of the space. Near the back, someone's jacket has slipped from its position on a chair back, sliding down to rest against the seat, and it stays there in its new position, draped awkwardly, waiting for its owner to notice or not notice, to adjust it or leave it be. The windows show their reflections more clearly now as the night has deepened. The interior of the shop, visible in the glass as a ghostly overlay on the street outside. And this doubling creates a strange space. Inside and outside existing together in the same visual field. Neither quite real, neither quite false. The music plays a song that might be familiar. The kind of tune that exists at the edge of recognition. Known, but not quite placeable. And this quality makes it perfect for background. Engaging enough to fill the space, but not enough to demand identification or attention. A cup of coffee grows cold on one of the tables. Its owner having stopped drinking some time ago, but not yet ready to leave. And the coffee sits there as coffee does, patient and purposeless now, its warmth leaching away into the surrounding air. The floor near the door shows darker patches where the rain has dripped from umbrellas and coats. Evidence of earlier arrivals that has mostly dried. And the wood there has a different texture, dampened and dried so many times that it has developed its own character. Someone's phone buzzes with a message. A small vibration on a wooden table, and the person reaches for it, checks it, puts it back without responding. The whole interaction taking seconds, leaving no visible trace on their expression or posture. The rain outside has settled into something steady and continuous, not heavy enough to call a downpour, not light enough to be a drizzle, just rain doing what rain does, falling from clouds that have more to give, showing no sign of stopping anytime soon. A small stack of business cards sits on the counter near the register. The shop's own cards, offering this place to anyone who might want to remember its name and address. And the stack diminishes gradually as people take one or two. Though not tonight. Tonight the cards just wait. The person in the corner has started gathering their things, not standing yet, but preparing. The small rituals of departure beginning. A book placed in a bag, a phone pocketed, a napkin crumpled and left on the table. The signals that time in this place is coming to an end. Outside, a couple walks past holding an umbrella between them, their bodies close together under its small shelter, and they pass the window in a moment, visible briefly in the coffee shop's light, then disappearing into the rain and the night, leaving the street empty again. The ceiling light nearest the back has developed a barely perceptible flicker, not enough to be truly annoying, just enough to notice if watching, and no one is watching. So the light continues its small irregularity unobserved, doing its job despite its imperfection. The warmth in the room holds steady, maintained by systems that work without attention. Radiators or vents doing their quiet work, keeping the temperature where it should be, keeping the cold of the rainy night from creeping in around the edges. The person gathering their things has paused, perhaps reconsidering, perhaps just enjoying a last moment in the warmth before facing the rain. And this pause extends. The preparation for leaving interrupted by the reluctance to actually leave. A common hesitation on nights like this. A chair scrapes against the floor as someone adjusts their position. The sound brief and unremarkable, swallowed by the room's general atmosphere. And then silence returns, or what passes for silence in a space with rain against windows and music playing softly, and all the small sounds that accumulate in occupied rooms. The windows continue to show the rain, the same view they have shown all evening, though the specific drops are always different, always new, the rain being the rain while each moment of it is unique, continuous and ever-changing at the same time. Near the counter, the pastry case shows its depleted state. Fewer items now than there were earlier, the day's production having been consumed one croissant and one muffin at a time. And what remains looks lonely in the too large space, waiting for morning and the chance to be replaced. The person behind the counter watches the room with the particular attention of someone responsible for it, not actively monitoring, but aware, taking in the few customers who remain, the state of the tables, the general feeling of an evening winding down, a clock ticks somewhere in the room, the sound only audible in certain moments when other sounds pause. And this ticking marks time in the traditional way, second by second, minute by minute, though the rhythm feels disconnected from the experience of being here, where time seems to move at its own pace. The coffee smell has become so familiar that it takes effort to notice it, the nose having adjusted to its presence, accepting it as the baseline against which other smells might be detected. And there are no other smells strong enough to break through. Just this constant aroma of beans and warmth. Someone sighs contentedly. A small sound of satisfaction or resignation. Impossible to tell which. And the sigh dissipates into the room like steam from a cup, becoming nothing, leaving nothing behind except perhaps a slight shift in the atmosphere that no one could measure or name. The rain outside makes the streetlights seem to have halos. The water in the air bending light in ways that create these soft glows. And these halos are visible through the coffee shop windows despite the fogging. Circles of illumination hanging in the wet darkness. A pen cap lies on the floor near one of the tables, separated from its pen at some point, lost and unnoticed, and it rests there in its small plastic existence, waiting to be found or swept away or simply left until it becomes invisible through familiarity. The light fixture above one of the tables has a dead bulb among its living ones. 3 out of 4 still working. And this creates a slight asymmetry in the light it casts, noticeable only if compared to the other fixtures, accepted as normal because it has been this way for a while. The person preparing to leave has finally stood, chair pushed back, jacket retrieved, the motions of departure finally undertaken, and the room adjusts subtly to accommodate one fewer presence, though nothing visible changes, just a shift in the weight of occupied space. Outside, the rain continues with the same persistence it has shown all evening, as if it has forgotten how to stop, as if falling is simply what water does now and will do indefinitely. And this persistence is neither threatening nor comforting, just present, just fact. A cup is carried to the counter, the person leaving returning their dish, a small courtesy that not everyone practices, and the cup is accepted and placed with others waiting for the dishwasher. The exchange brief and nearly silent, a nod perhaps, a murmured thanks. The door opens and the sound of rain gets louder. The outside world entering briefly, cold air and water smell, and the particular acoustic of precipitation in open space. And then the door closes, and the coffee shop seals itself again, returning to its contained warmth. The bell above the door jingles as it was designed to, announcing the departure that just happened, and the sound fades quickly, leaving the room slightly emptier, slightly quieter, though these changes are more felt than measured. Near the window, the person who was watching the rain hasn't moved, perhaps hasn't noticed the departure, or noticed and didn't care, lost in whatever thoughts occupy a mind on a rainy night, finding something in the falling water that holds attention even when there's nothing particular to see. The music continues its rotation, another song beginning as the last one ended, the playlist working through its contents, and whoever put it together understood something about evenings like this, about the need for sound without stimulation, for presence without demand. A small puddle forms near where the departed customer stood, water that dripped from their jacket or umbrella during the brief moment of putting it on. And this puddle will evaporate eventually, will be absorbed by the wood, or will be wiped up. But for now, it sits there as evidence of passage. The person behind the counter notes the departure with the part of their mind that keeps track of such things. One fewer customer. The evening moving toward its conclusion, and they check the clock without seeming to, aware of how much time remains before closing. The empty chair where the departed customer sat still holds a trace of their warmth. The fabric having absorbed body heat over the hours of occupation. And this warmth will fade gradually, the chair returning to room temperature in its own time. Outside, the street receives the rain with the patience of all streets, the water running along its surface, finding its way to drains and gutters, carrying whatever it carries toward destinations that are entirely unremarkable. Sewers and pipes, and eventually larger bodies of water. The coffee shop has settled into its late evening configuration. Fewer people, quieter sounds, the sense of an ending approaching though not yet arrived. And this settling has a quality of comfort to it. The ease that comes when a space has served its purpose and can begin to rest. A napkin dispenser reflects the light from above, its chrome surface showing a distorted version of the room, a curved and stretched image that means nothing, but exists nonetheless. One of the many small mirrors that public spaces accumulate without anyone planning them. The person still watching the rain has allowed their head to tilt slightly, resting against the window frame, finding a position that could be maintained for a long time without discomfort. And from this position, the view of the rain is unchanged, but the relationship to it has shifted from observation to something closer to communion. The rain outside has a particular quality at this distance, heard through glass and walls, filtered and softened. And this filtered sound is somehow more peaceful than the full experience would be. The harshness removed, the wetness implied rather than felt. A small sound comes from somewhere in the back of the shop. A door closing perhaps, or something shifting on a shelf. The kind of sound that buildings make when they're doing their building things, settling and adjusting and responding to changes in temperature or pressure. The warmth continues to fill the space, maintained by invisible systems, the air comfortable without effort. And this warmth is the foundation of everything else. The reason the rain outside feels far away, the reason the people remaining feel no urgency to leave. The light in the room has taken on that late evening quality, unchanged in its actual brightness, but seeming softer somehow, as if the hour itself affects how illumination is perceived, as if eyes tired from a full day see things differently than fresh morning eyes would. The music plays on, quiet and consistent, the soundtrack continuing even as the audience diminishes, and it will play until someone turns it off, following its programmed path through songs that someone selected at some point for reasons that may or may not still make sense. The windows continue to hold their condensation, the moisture having found its equilibrium. And through this soft filter, the world outside appears gentler than it might actually be. The edges blurred, the lights diffused, everything transformed into a watercolor version of itself. Someone stretches in their chair without standing, arms reaching, spine lengthening, the kind of stretch that happens unconsciously, and then they settle back into the position they were in before, or something close to it, the stretch complete and forgotten almost as soon as it ends. The floor creaks under the weight of the person behind the counter as they move to check something near the front. And this creak is familiar, has happened at this spot countless times. The board speaking in its old voice about pressures it has endured since its installation. A glass of water catches the light in a particular way, creating a small rainbow on the table beside it. Light separated into its components by the curved surface and the liquid within. And this tiny spectrum exists for anyone who might notice, though probably no one does. The rain outside seems lighter for a moment, a brief variation in intensity, and then returns to its former state, as if the clouds were testing a different approach before deciding to stick with what was working. And this variation passes without comment, noticed or unnoticed, depending on who might have been watching. The person near the window has closed their eyes, not sleeping perhaps, but resting, letting the sound of the rain and the warmth of the room do whatever those things do when attention is withdrawn. And their breathing has slowed to match the tempo of the evening, deep and regular. A receipt from earlier sits in the jar near the register, its paper beginning to curl at the edges, the ink slightly smudged. One of the days, many transactions reduced to a strip of thermal paper that will fade eventually, the numbers becoming illegible, the record disappearing. The espresso machine makes a sound that might be a gurgle, some internal process occurring without prompting, and the person behind the counter glances at it briefly, recognizes the sound as normal, and returns their attention to whatever it was on before. The clock on the wall shows time passing as clocks do, its hands moving in their prescribed circles, and the hour is later than it was and earlier than it will be. The present moment existing in its narrow band between past and future, occupied by rain and warmth and quiet. Outside, the street remains empty except for the rain. No pedestrians visible. No cars passing at this particular moment. Just the wet pavement and the falling water and the lights that illuminate nothing in particular. The city resting in whatever way cities rest when the night grows late. The warmth in the room exists as a presence now. Not something noticed, but something inhabited. And the few people remaining have become part of it, have been absorbed into this atmosphere of coffee smell and soft light and the distant sound of rain. A book lies closed on one of the tables, its reader having departed at some point, perhaps forgotten or perhaps left intentionally for the next person who might want something to read. And the book waits in its patient way, offering whatever story it holds to whoever might open it. The light from the street creates a pattern on the floor near the window, a rectangle of outside illumination that shifts when cars pass. That pulses with the rhythm of traffic, and this pattern is familiar, has existed on this floor on countless nights, marking the boundary between interior and exterior light. Someone shifts their weight from one hip to the other, a small adjustment that relieves pressure without requiring standing. And this movement happens in the ordinary way such movements happen, without thought, without decision, just the body knowing what it needs. The rain continues its work outside, patient and persistent, and the sound it makes has become a kind of silence, the baseline against which all other sounds are measured, so constant that its absence would be more noticeable than its presence. Near the back of the room, a table lamp creates its circle of warmer light, the bulb giving off that slightly orange glow that incandescent bulbs have, different from the overhead fixtures, offering a different quality of illumination for anyone who might sit within its reach. The person behind the counter has stopped moving, standing in one spot, looking at nothing in particular, perhaps thinking about the end of shift, perhaps not thinking at all, just existing in the space between tasks, in the pause that work sometimes allows. A small fly walks across the window glass, its path erratic and purposeless from a human perspective, but perhaps meaningful in whatever way meaning exists for flies. And it walks until it reaches the frame, and then turns and walks another direction. The coffee that remains in various cups around the room has cooled to whatever temperature cups cool to when left alone. And And this cooling happened without witness, without comment, just the ordinary physics of heat transfer playing out across multiple small ceramic vessels. The windows show the rain and the street and the darkness. The same view they have shown all evening. And there is comfort in this sameness, in the predictability of a view that doesn't change except in small ways that don't matter. The music has entered a phase of instrumental pieces. No voices now, just sounds that don't require understanding. And this shift feels appropriate for the hour, for the diminished energy in the room, for the people who remain but aren't really listening. A drop of condensation finally falls from the window to the sill, having gathered enough weight to overcome its surface tension, and it lands with a tiny sound that joins all the other tiny sounds, becoming part of the evening's quiet symphony. The person near the window opens their eyes slowly, returning from wherever they went when their eyes were closed, and they take in the room with the slightly unfocused gaze of someone who has been elsewhere, adjusting to the fact of being here. Outside, a truck passes, larger than the cars that came before, its shape visible briefly through the rain, its engine louder, and then it's gone, and the street returns to its familiar emptiness. The interruption absorbed and forgotten. The floor holds the furniture, and the people with the same patience it has always shown, bearing weight as floors do, asking nothing in return, providing a surface for all the activities that happen in this space, from the purposeful to the aimless. A spoon rests in a saucer, its handle pointing in some direction that means nothing, its bowl holding a residue of whatever it last stirred, and it will be collected eventually, washed and dried and returned to its place, ready for the next day's service. The warmth continues to press gently against everyone and everything, maintained by systems that work without thought, creating the environment that makes all of this possible. That separates the interior from the rainy night outside. Someone gathers their things with the slow movements of reluctant departure. Coat retrieved, bag collected, the small possessions of a coffee shop visit assembled for the journey home. And this gathering happens without hurry, the rain outside perhaps making the prospect of leaving less appealing. The person behind the counter notes this preparation with the awareness that another closing task will soon be complete. Another table to clear, another step toward the end of the shift, and they wait without impatience for the departure to happen at its own pace. A last look around the room before leaving, taking in the warm light and the other faces and the windows with their view of rain. And then the turn toward the door, the reach for the handle, the small bell jingling as the door opens and the night enters briefly. The door closes again, and the coffee shop returns to its sealed state, warmer than before the opening. Quiet voice that might have spoken, and the room adjusts to this new configuration of presence. Fewer people, more space. The evening continuing its descent toward closing. The rain outside seems to intensify briefly, as if responding to the open door. As if the weather noticed the escape and wanted to demonstrate what awaited. But this might be imagination, might be the momentary loudness of direct exposure fading back into the filtered sound of rain through glass. Near the window, the remaining person hasn't moved, still watching, still waiting for something or nothing, and their presence anchors the room in a way, gives the space someone to be warm for, someone to be lit for, someone to continue existing in front of. The music plays a song with a guitar that sounds like it was recorded in a room not unlike this one. Close and warm and intimate. And the notes fill the space between rain sounds, adding human presence to the mechanical and natural sounds that would otherwise dominate. A table that was occupied now sits empty, its surface showing the evidence of recent use. A ring from a cup, some crumbs, a napkin left behind, and these traces will be cleared soon. The table restored to its ready state for customers who won't come tonight, but might come tomorrow. The person behind the counter moves toward the empty table, cloth in hand, beginning the routine of clearing and cleaning that happens countless times each day. Movements practiced to the point of being automatic, hands knowing where to wipe without eyes needing to guide them. The windows show the street in its post-departure state, the same street it was before. The person who left now invisible, absorbed into the rainy night, heading wherever they're heading. And the coffee shop doesn't track or wonder, just continues being what it is. A candle that was burning near the back has nearly exhausted itself. The wax pooled around a wick that sputters occasionally. And this small flame fights its quiet fight against extinction. Not long for this world, but still burning. Still contributing its small light to the room. The warmth settles into the space vacated by the departed customer, filling the gap, maintaining the equilibrium that heated spaces maintain. And this settling happens without notice, without any visible sign that something has changed. The clock shows a time that is closer to closing than to opening. The evening having consumed itself hour by hour, until only these final hours remain. And the few people still present exist in this time as if time didn't matter, as if the clock were just decoration rather than measurement. The rain continues to fall outside with no indication of stopping. The clouds apparently having an unlimited supply of water to release. And this continuation is neither surprising nor concerning. Just the fact of the evening, the weather doing what weather does without consideration for the plans or preferences of those it affects. Someone yawns, a small involuntary expression of tiredness, and the yawn spreads briefly to another person who wasn't watching, but somehow caught it anyway. The way yawns sometimes spread, a small contagion of fatigue passing through the room. The light from the table lamp in the corner flickers once, a momentary interruption in its steady glow, and then returns to normal. The bulb doing whatever bulbs do when they flicker, testing their continued existence perhaps, or just responding to some variation in current. The floor beneath the cleared table shows the marks of chair legs. Small indentations where wood has compressed under repeated pressure. A map of where people have sat over the years. Thousands of customers leaving their trace without knowing they were leaving anything. The person near the window has shifted position, now sitting more upright, perhaps preparing to leave, or perhaps just finding a new configuration of comfort. And their eyes still watch the rain, but with a different quality now, more present, less lost. A refrigerator door opens behind the counter. The person there checking contents or retrieving something, and the cold air that escapes mixes briefly with the room's warmth before being absorbed. The temperature equilibrium maintained by the simple physics of larger spaces overwhelming smaller ones. The coffee smell has reached its late evening depth, no longer sharp or bright, just present and familiar. And this smell is the smell of the shop now. What it smells like at this hour on nights like this, what it will smell like tomorrow night at the same hour if the rain comes again. A small pile of sugar has accumulated on one of the tables, spilled from a packet that was torn impatiently. And this sugar sits there in its granular whiteness, waiting to be wiped away, contributing nothing now except evidence of someone's earlier presence. The music continues in its quiet rotation, faithful to its programming, and the songs pass without comment, without anyone noting their titles or artists, just sound that fills the space between other sounds, accompaniment without assertion. Outside, a light changes color at an intersection visible through the window, red to green, allowing traffic that doesn't exist to proceed through an intersection no one is approaching. The infrastructure of the city continuing its work regardless of whether anyone needs it at this particular moment. The warmth in the room has that quality of air that has been occupied, breathed and rebreathed, the oxygen slightly diminished, the humidity slightly elevated, and this air is comfortable nonetheless, intimate in a way that fresh air cannot be. A strand of hair has fallen across someone's face, displaced by a movement made some time ago, and it stays there across their cheek and near their eye, unnoticed or ignored, part of the small disarrangements that accumulate when the body is at rest. The windows continue their work of separation, keeping the rain outside and the warmth inside, doing what windows have done since windows were invented, allowing light to pass while holding weather at bay. A simple technology that makes evenings like this possible. Someone's shoe has come partially unlaced, the bow having loosened over the hours of sitting, and the laces hang in their loosened state, not quite undone, but not properly tied either, waiting for attention that may or may not come before the shoe is removed for the night. The person behind the counter has moved to the register, perhaps counting something, perhaps just standing there with the machine as a natural place to stand. And their posture has the quality of someone whose shift is almost over, tired but present, professional even in the absence of customers needing service. Outside, the rain creates a kind of white noise that enters the room as filtered sound, not quite audible as individual drops anymore, just a wash of water sound that underlies everything else, a constant that the ear accepts and then ignores. The candle near the back has finally gone out, its wick having consumed the last of the wax that fed it, and a thin trail of smoke rises briefly before dissipating. The end of a small life that lasted the length of this evening. That will be replaced tomorrow with another candle that will burn and die in its turn. A glass of water sits half full or half empty, depending on perspective, its owner having drunk what they wanted and left the rest. And the water sits there in its orderly way, level and still, reflecting the light from above in its small clear surface. The floor creaks again as weight shifts somewhere in the room. The building continuing its conversation with the people who occupy it, speaking in the language of wood and stress and time, saying nothing in particular, but always speaking. The clock moves toward closing with the same pace it has maintained all evening, neither hurrying nor delaying, just marking the passage of time as clocks are built to do, its hands sweeping through their circles with mechanical indifference to what those circles mean. The last person near the window has begun the slow process of gathering themselves, not rushing, not eager, but beginning nonetheless. The various items scattered around their table being collected with the unhurried movements of someone who has nowhere urgent to be, but knows that being here is coming to an end. A cup is lifted and found to be empty, its contents consumed at some point without conscious attention, and the cup is set back down with a small sound that joins all the other small sounds. Ceramic on wood, the punctuation of countless coffee shop moments. The rain outside continues as if it has always been falling and will always fall, as if rain is simply the natural state of the atmosphere and dry weather an aberration. And this continuity is both reassuring and unremarkable. Just the fact of the evening extending into the night, the person behind the counter watches the last customer prepare to leave with the patience of someone who has watched many last customers prepare to leave, knowing the rhythms of departure, the hesitations and the gatherings, and the final looks around. A chair is pushed back from a table, the legs scraping against wood with a sound that seems louder in the nearly empty room. And the person standing takes a moment to stretch, to shake off the stillness that has accumulated in their body over the hours of sitting. The warmth in the room seems more precious now that departure is imminent. The contrast with the cold rain outside becoming more real, more immediate. And there is a moment of reluctance visible in the way the last customer pauses before moving toward the door. The coffee smell will remain after everyone has gone. Will greet the morning staff when they arrive to open. Will be here tomorrow night for the next round of customers seeking shelter from whatever weather the next day brings. The smell is permanent in a way that the people who create it are not. A jacket is retrieved from the back of a chair, its fabric cold from hanging, and arms find their way into sleeves with the automatic movements of getting dressed. Buttons or zippers fastened without looking, the body knowing what to do. The door handle is reached, the small bell preparing to ring, the threshold between warmth and rain about to be crossed, and the person pauses for a fraction of a second before pulling, gathering themselves for the transition from inside to outside. The bell jingles, the door opens, the rain sounds loud and immediate, and then the door closes and the bell settles, and the coffee shop is empty of customers. Just the person behind the counter and the furniture and the warmth and the smell of coffee and the sound of rain outside. The evening complete, the space waiting for tomorrow. The room settles into its emptiness. The absence of customers creating a different kind of quiet. And the person behind the counter moves with more purpose now. The work of closing beginning in earnest. Tables to clear, chairs to arrange, the espresso machine to clean and cover. The rain outside continues its patient work, indifferent to the change inside. And the windows show the same view they have shown all evening. Wet street and falling water and the occasional passing car. Nothing changed by the departure of the last customer. A cloth wipes across table surfaces, collecting crumbs and spills and the small evidence of occupation, and the tables return to their ready state, clean and empty, waiting for tomorrow's customers with the patience that tables have. The music still plays, perhaps forgotten in the beginning of closing, and it fills the empty room with sound that no one is listening to, continuing its rotation through songs that will eventually end when someone remembers to turn it off. Chairs are lifted and placed on tables, legs pointing upward, the signal that a coffee shop is closed or closing. And this inversion changes the character of the room, makes it something other than what it was when people sat and drank and talked. The warmth remains, though no one needs it now. The heating system, not knowing that the purpose for warmth has departed, and the air holds its comfortable temperature while the person behind the counter moves through the closing routine. A light is turned off in the back. The kitchen or the storage area going dark, and the shadows in the front of the shop shift slightly. The balance of illumination changing as the room prepares for its nightly rest. The floor receives the footsteps of closing, the last walks of the day across its worn surface, and it creaks in its familiar places, speaking its familiar words, the building's voice continuing even as the day ends. Outside, the rain falls on a street that has no one left to see it from inside the coffee shop. And it will fall through the night, perhaps, or will stop at some point when the clouds have emptied. Either way, making no difference to the closed shop. The person behind the counter completes the familiar tasks. The same tasks completed every night. The same surfaces wiped, and the same machines turned off, and the same lights extinguished. The rhythm of closing playing out as it has played out hundreds of times before, and eventually the last light goes dark. The door is locked. The coffee shop enters its nighttime state, empty and quiet and still warm. The rain continuing outside, the smell of coffee lingering inside, everything waiting for tomorrow when it will all begin again.